Good Thursday afternoon to you. 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Plenty of Browns to talk about. We'll also talk a little bit about the Buckeyes getting ready for a New Year's Eve showdown in the national semifinals against the Georgia Bulldogs. But we begin by talking Browns, getting ready for a Saturday game that expects to be frigidly cold temperatures, below zero wind chills, some wind, some snow over at First Energy Stadium. And the Browns will be without one of their needed defensive ends. Jadeveon Clowney ruled out with the concussion. John Johnson III, that thigh still questionable for Saturday. Good news, though. Everybody else clear to play, including Nick Chubb, who had missed a couple of days with a foot injury. He was back practicing, looks good to go. Ethan Posick, the center, looks good to go as well. Let's welcome in Quincy Carrier, host of Untitled, Unfiltered Browns coverage. Quincy, not a great thing that you don't have Jadeveon Clowney in the game where you expect to see a lot of running with Alvin Kamara and Taysom Hill. But good that Nick Chubb is there because you're going to have to run the ball too.
Yeah, I mean, you want Nick Chubb there, right? I think Myles Garrett was sick for a couple of days too. It would be nice to have Clowney. But let's be honest, we know that Clowney is sometimes he's Jadeveon, sometimes he is number 90, right? And in these kind of situations, he tends to just be number 90. So hopefully you can get somebody, Alex Wright to step up. Obviously, we'll feel much better when Jadeveon's out there. And hopefully he can get back healthy soon here so he can play in these last two games. But I think they'll be able to make do. I like what I've seen from Alex Wright when he's been out there recently. So hopefully that improves. And the issue with the Browns' run game isn't the edge play. It's been the interior. So at the end of the day, those are guys that are going to have to step up.
Yeah, without question. Well, talking about edge play, Myles Garrett has made it to 4 straight Pro Bowls now. He had the most fan votes among defensive ends in the AFC. And he is the first Browns defensive end to make 4 Pro Bowls since Bill Glass did it in 1963, 1964, 1965, and 1968. Take a listen to Myles Garrett on being named to the Pro Bowl.
I'm never going to take it for granted. I don't care how many times I'm in it. So, I mean, I know, Joel has more than me, and I know he's just as grateful or more because all that work, you're just glad that people take it, pay attention to it and really take it to heart because at the end of the day, it's not guaranteed. You might get injured one year, you might not make it. I mean, there's some guys that feel like got snubbed on other teams, and you just never know. So you just be grateful for the privilege to play in the Pro Bowl because it doesn't come around often for a lot of guys.
So. To put in perspective how long it's been since a Browns defensive end has made 4 Pro Bowls, 1965 was when I was born. That's how long ago that was.
I didn't know they had the Pro Bowl in 1965. Legitimately, I didn't know that was a thing. That was news to me, figuring that out. But yeah, Myles Garrett, but 4 straight, it should be 5 if he doesn't, end up with that whole situation in 2019 with Mason Rudolph. He had 10 sacks in 10 games. I mean, he was on a roll at the end of that season. Probably would have ended up with 12 or 13. And that's what's the incredible part about this. We need to start looking at this hey, Myles Garrett is probably on his run right now. And honestly, if next year he gets this same number of sacks, right? Because right now he's at 13.5, which is, by the way, his second highest in his career. And he has 3 games left to go. So who knows what's going to happen there. And this is a year where people felt like Myles has been down, right? This is the crazy part about it and the expectations with Myles. Even when he's having a career year, it's not good enough for some people. But, if he has another year like this next year, he's going to be pretty solid in his Hall of Fame argument. At that point, it's pretty much 5 Pro Bowls, 3. He's going to have 3 first-team All-Pro selections after this year. If he gets a 4th one, that's a Hall of Fame lock right there. So it's funny. It feels like just yesterday we were talking about young Myles and the potential and everything else. And, pretty soon here, we're going to be referring to him as Hall of Famer, future Hall of Famer, Myles Garrett.
Yep, I would agree. And you know what? If the Browns' record was a little bit better, he'd be in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year. A team that is 500, right around 500, under 500, you're not going to, unless somebody just blows the stat sheet away, which he hasn't done, you're not going to get what you should. But he's had a really good year defensively.
Well, and it's not dead yet. His Defensive Player of the Year argument is very much alive because you have to remember last year T.J. Watt run it, and they were only 9-8. The Browns still can go 9-8, and I think that will be fine. He has to get the highest sack total in the NFL, right? Because that's the one thing that's been holding him back is like every argument about Myles Garrett is an advanced number, and advanced numbers don't move the needle for the people who vote for whatever reason, like sacks do, right? So if he ends the year as the sack king in the NFL and he's the advanced number king, I find it very hard for anybody to make a legitimate argument that he's not the Defensive Player of the Year. So, and he's third or fifth in sacks right now. So he could get there. I think the leader has 15. If he gets to like 17, that's probably going to be able to be enough to take it. And I think he can get Defensive Player of the Year if he gets to about that. Now he can go off, right? Like, I would point out, the quarterbacks that he's playing, Andy Dalton, not really a mobile guy, right? Tyler Heineke, not really a mobile guy. And then whoever Pittsburgh throws out there, those are very sackable quarterbacks is my whole point. So I would not say he can't get it yet. We'll see. He might be able to have an explosion here.
All right. I know you've addressed this on your Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. What are you still excited to watch about this year's Browns? Why are you watching? What are you excited to see?
One, Myles being able to chase like a Defensive Player of the Year, right? You can't say it's a wasted year if he won Defensive Player of the Year, right? Like that's ultimately going to be something very important for his career. Also, you get to watch like maybe Perrion Winfrey develops, right? You want to see which young guys are going to show signs here at the end of the season so you can know what you have going forward. And then obviously Deshaun Watson, right? Like, I have been looking at this ever since they did not win that game in Miami to get to at least 5 or 6 wins, which has been my thing the whole time. I have been looking at this like, okay, you drafted a quarterback in the first round, and now he's finally going to play. And that's how I'm judging the rest of the season based on how that guy looks, right? Like that's what the future of the franchise is, right? It's on Deshaun Watson. How does he mesh with this offense? If he looks good, that's great. Now, it's going to be hard to get a statistical barometer of that because it's harder to tell how he's playing from a stats perspective because the weather has been so bad in all of the games that he has played in. But you're starting to get a feel for it if you're watching the games. Like, okay, he's comfortable. He looks in command. He is moving the offense up and down the field. These are the things that you want to see. And honestly, it's very important how he performs in this kind of weather because this isn't something that's avoidable, not just in Cleveland. I think we focus on just Cleveland too much when we talk about this, but the whole division is cold, Dave. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it's cold in Pittsburgh. It's cold in Cincinnati. It's very cold in Baltimore, right? So he's going to have to be able to perform in these elements, and it's not like Kansas City's any warmer, right? It's not like any of these teams are playoff perennial favorites in AFC. Play indoors. So he's going to have to get used to this no matter where he plays, especially in Cleveland, especially in the AFC North. And you want to see how he can perform in this environment and if this is something that he can get used to because, the Aaron Rodgers famously is a guy who does not play that well in cold weather, even though he's been the quarterback for Green Bay. And you can point back to the fact that they've only had one Super Bowl run in his whole career, despite him being one of the most talented quarterbacks to ever play. Kind of important how these guys perform in these cold weather situations, especially when you're in the situation that the Browns are.
Yeah, without question. Watson talked earlier this week about challenging some of the younger players and also how operating the no huddle, how comfortable he's getting.
We have the talent, we have the operation, and we have a lot of young guys, especially that haven't played as much football as me, Amari, a couple of O-linemen, Nick Chubb and things like that. So, the things that I'm seeing and the things that I, back there as a quarterback, I want them to be able to see the same things. Because if we can do that, then that's where the more explosive plays are able to happen, throughout the game.
Deshaun, what do you like about running the no huddle like you guys did on Saturday?
It's really just, the defense have to commit to what they want to do. So just switching up the tempo is always good. Being able to see the defense and let them show their hand. The hard part is when they don't show their hand, but, they got to make a choice because, they got to be able to communicate as well as us too. So, that's always a good thing.
Quincy, the more I hear him talk, the more I understand why the Browns wanted that guy as their quarterback.
Oh yeah, he's very impressive in those post-game situations. Like, I think his second post-game press conference back was that's when I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, he's back, right? Like, I think after the Cincinnati game, when you listen to his post-game press conference versus what it was against Houston, right? He didn't do any of the normal Deshaun stuff that he does, right? But against Cincinnati, he was able to break down why he threw an interception, what happened with his eyes, what happened with the defense, what happened with the route, and why it got thrown wrong, and then diagnose what he should have done to fix it, right? All from recall. And he did that same thing, which I felt like was more impressive, with a random ball that he threw in the dirt that somebody asked him about, and he was just like able to bring it back up. I was like, okay, mentally he's back, because he didn't do that against Houston, right? He didn't recall it with that level, and now he's back at that level where he's recalling all these things, and it's really good to see him out there taking ownership of this offense, right? Because the last 2 weeks before this game, it felt like Deshaun Watson was running Kevin Stefanski's offense from his body language perspective. Now, the last week and going forward, it looks like he's running the offense that he's in command of. Right. And that's a beautiful place to be in, right? And that's where he's going to become a much better quarterback when he's at that place.
The other thing, he sounds a lot like LeBron James used to, recalling specific plays. And that's a good thing. All right, before we go to break, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
This is Steve Landon. Looking at the weather forecast for Saturday, wondering if that would not be a good game to try out the two-back offense, since it's probably going to be mostly running. Anyway, just wondering what your thoughts were. Love the show.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. I'm a fan of the two-back offense. I don't know if that will be, brought out of mothballs, but they're going to have to run the football if they're getting the 20, 30, 40-mile-hour winds and the below-zero wind chills that are expected.
Totem things. You know what I mean? That sounds like a perfect opportunity for short passes. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't expect him to throw like only 20 passes in this game. I think that they're probably going to cook something up to where he's going to throw. Whether people agree with that or not, we'll see. It's going to depend on the result. But if they're going to be crowding and overplaying the run, you got to trust Deshaun enough to get a ball, 5-10 yards down the field if he's going to be the quarterback of the future here. So I would not be surprised. Like, if you go back to the game where he played in this kind of weather when he was in Houston versus Cleveland, I think was that 2020? If that was 2020, but I think he threw the ball a lot in that game. So I would not be surprised if he throws the ball a lot in this game.
Quincy Carrier and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. We'll also talk more about the team of the Browns. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier, host of Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey guys, this is Ron from Cleveland calling in again, and I wanted to know what you think about the problem with Cade York. Cade is currently the worst kicker in the NFL, has the worst percentage of made field goals. Cade was brought in as a fourth-round pick without any competition. In training camp, he was immediately handed over the job as a fourth-round pick. Now, the Browns were criticized for using a fourth-round pick on a kicker, but obviously we needed one bad. But there again, this seems to be a blunder by Barry. A lot of his picks aren't turning out to be real good picks. And I just want to know what you think about the whole deal with Cade York, the way he was obtained, and what we got for a fourth-round pick. So I know that kickers aren't usually draft picks. They're picked up after the draft, and it looks like this one should have been too. He had an amazing first week, and after that it went downhill. So let me know what you guys think about this. As always, love your show, and go Browns! Woo!
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Quincy, I know you were kind of like, don't draft a kicker. I get it. He struggled. I still think he can. Let's see 1-2 years further down the line. Right now, it doesn't look like a great pick. I get where the caller's going. Give him some time.
I would say when it comes to kickers, the reason I think people misconstrue my point sometimes. It's like, hey, the reason I don't want to draft a kicker is because we fool ourselves into thinking that we know what a good kicker is going to be in the NFL. Oftentimes, these things are random, right? Because if they weren't random, Justin Tucker would have been a phenomenon at college. But, like, barely any of us know that he played at Texas, right? Like, that's what I'm saying about kickers, is that we don't really know who's going to be great, and we have no good way of measuring that because for whatever reason, that transition between college and the NFL is just vicious. And when you don't have a good process, volume is your best friend, right? And volume could help the Browns here when it comes to kicker. Just throw volume at it. Just kicker after kicker, you'll find one eventually. That's my whole thing when it comes to kicker. But when it comes to Cade York, yes, you have to kind of be patient on him. But there's a limit to that patience because we don't know if Mike Prefer, who pounded the table for him, is going to be back next year. It's likely he's not. And if he's not there and Cade York starts missing kicks in camp, they're going to bring somebody else in. You know, because that's not their fourth-round draft pick to worry about anymore. That's not the guy that they pounded the table for. So, you know, it's unfortunate, but oftentimes what happens when teams draft kickers is they end up having to cut them because they struggle early, and that kicker catches on somewhere else, right? It happened with Zane Gonzalez. You know, it's the rough cycle of how this thing goes, and if you want something to confirm my point is Mason Crosby might be the only kicker that's still on the team that drafted him, that's never left, past their rookie deal.
Yeah.
That's why you don't do
it. And you know, to illustrate how rough it is kicking at First Energy Stadium, Justin Tucker missed a field goal, had one blocked there last week. So, yeah, I get it, though. You know, kicker is a results-driven business. Did you make the kick? If you make the kicks, you're a good kicker. If you didn't, you're not a good one. Here's the other thing. This fan base, roughly half of it, by any polls that we've seen, is in favor of a head coaching change. I have been called everything from a Kevin Stefanski butt kisser to an apologist. I just don't see it. What are your thoughts on that? Just the whole, you know, replace the head coach thing. I just don't see it here.
It seems like more or less people's frustrations about the entire season than it does about Kevin Stefanski. And when that's the case, you don't fire somebody because of that, right? Look, let's face it, every place when the fan base is frustrated, they say they got to fire the coach. There are people in Baltimore that legit, like, I'm not saying like the crazies or anything. Legitimate people want John Harbaugh fired, right? Because of stuff that he does during the course of the season. Same thing with Mike Tomlin. Like, there are people who've wanted Mike Tomlin fired from his position. And same thing with even Zach Taylor after he went to the Super Bowl with Cincinnati. When people are frustrated with the team, they're gonna say you should fire the coach. It's not a good reason to fire the coach, especially when that coach was part of the pitch that you made to the quarterback that you just signed to be the future of the franchise. And that offense was something that he signed up to play in. And I don't think that Deshaun wanted to sign up somewhere where he was going to have to learn a new offense in the offseason, because if he wanted to do that, he could have signed with Carolina, where it was obvious he was going to get a new coach after that first year, right? So that is something that, look, people are going to say because they're emotional and they want something figurative done, right? They just want something demonstrative done for them to feel better or to buy in easier for next year. But it's not a good reason to fire Kevin Stefanski, because let's face it, the offense, which he's responsible for, and look, I know people don't like it because they think a head coach should be responsible for all sides of the ball, and on some level that's true, but this is more like a corporate entity, right? Kevin's in charge of his department, which is head coaching, team building, all that, in the offense. He delegates the special teams and defensive responsibilities to people who are have more expertise than him in that area. Those people have failed. He, as a CEO, has to make that choice now to replace those heads of those departments. And if he does not do that, then that's a failure on him. But until he doesn't do that, that does not become his problem. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. No. I agree with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Before we go to break, what areas of this team need to be improved the most, in your opinion? In other words, how did we get here? I know there's injuries, but how did we get to 6-8 at this point?
6-8? Like, how did they get to 6-8?
Yeah, what areas have failed? What areas need improved the most?
Well, I mean, if you just had more consistency in special teams and just a better defensive tackle position, like better D tackle depth, you probably don't give up those 13 points, and you probably don't lose via game-losing field goal against the Chargers, and that's the 2 wins right there, right? Like that's really the difference. Some of it was, hey, in certain positions, Jacoby Brissett was not able to help you in some spots. Some of it was luck. This team's not far away. The holes that they need to fix aren't the expensive holes that you need to fix, right? Quarterback, edge rusher, DB. It's really just the inexpensive stuff, right? Like Cincinnati got DJ Reader for the cheap and BJ Hill for the cheap. You can get guys like that for the cheap. So they just need to fix some of these small parts. Obviously, a better defense will help. A better defensive scheme will help. A better defensive coordinator will help. And just fixing that, and hopefully that leads to better luck too, because it's the NFL, man. You're going to need luck. Everybody good.
Yeah, without question. Winning and losing is often 1-2 plays, and unfortunately for the Browns, they haven't made them this year. Quincy Carrier and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. We'll also hear from Deshaun Watson again. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier, host of Untitled, Unfiltered Browns coverage. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
This whole talk about firing Joe Woods, I think everybody wanted Kevin to fire him, I would say mid-season. But I think Kevin is either trying to wait until the end to make coaching decisions as far as who's coming back, who's staying, who can really take charge of this defense and or special teams. And I think a perfect example of that is Sean McVay in that 2019 season when the defense wasn't good. And Deshaun needed help offensively and on special teams. So the following year, that 2020 year, they basically rejuvenated that staff. And I think Kevin really might do that in the offseason. I think we might stay with Alex Van Pelt. Unfortunately, Mike Prefer might stay, or he might promote somebody else to special teams coordinator. And or we could get a new defensive coordinator, which there are a lot of good defensive coordinators out there.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Quincy, the problem with changing coaches in season is who assumes the defensive coordinator position or the special teams. It's not like you can say, okay, guys, you know what to do. Go do it. There's got to be somebody to take over.
Yeah, and I think, Kevin's going to be true to himself. I think we can say that after 3 years. He is very true to himself. This is a man who, for better or worse, is not a panicker. Right. And I think that's benefited us more than it's not. Right. And I think it's been a great benefit for this team that he's not a panicker. And I think that's who you need in this kind of a city and franchise is somebody who's not going to panic. And part of that means he's not going to just make a move because people feel like he should make the move right now. He's going to wait till it's appropriate for him to make that move. Wait till he feels like he has enough information to make that move because he doesn't see the benefit of doing it early. This is not a super emotional guy, right? Like, he is not the most emotional guy. I think that's a good thing, and he's going to stay true to himself. He will probably make the moves, right? Because he's also logical. And logically, I don't see how you can justify keeping Joe Woods. Maybe you can justify Mike Prefer because the stuff that he does is ultimately not that important if the team's better. But with Joe Woods, I can't look at how he can look at what happened the last 3 years and logically make that decision. If it gets to that point to where he keeps Joe Woods, then that's something that I would be shocked by. But Kevin, he's not going to fire anybody midseason because it's not how he rolls. Like, when has Kevin ever really made one of those like harsh moves in the middle of a game, right? Remember Hugh Jackson? Hugh Jackson used to just bench a guy at halftime for the vibes, right? Like, just straight up. He would say it in the press conference. That felt like we needed a mood change. Legit, word for word. This is what Hugh Jackson used to say. Like, man, I just put Cody Kessler in because maybe the vibes would change, right? Like, that's what Hugh was. It was a very emotional staff. And yeah, people got fired in midseason, traded in the training camp all the time. Look at how this regime has handled everything in the shadow of Hugh. And it's like, okay, David Njoku wants out. We let that sit, right? He's still on the team. Kareem Hunt wants out. He throws a fit in training camp. He doesn't get moved. They don't make the panic. The Baker Mayfield cries, writes a letter, wants to get kicked out. We wait until somebody gives us a trade offer that we feel like is acceptable to get rid of him. This is not a team that just does something because everybody's saying do it right now. They have proven themselves to be a patient bunch, and they will wait until it's most opportune for them because they don't want to make this seem like, and they have a perception to fight against when it comes to the Cleveland Browns under Jimmy Haslam. They don't want to make this seem like an opportunity for you to get fired. They want to make this seem like a stable opportunity, and that coordinators going to get all the opportunity possible to prove their worth if they take this job. So, this is just them being them. Hey, nobody likes being a functional organization in the moment, right? Like, this drives Pittsburgh and Baltimore fans crazy all the time. But this is what a functional organization does.
What do you think the Browns can do to take Deshaun Watson to the next level? How can they help him get to where he's going?
I think he needs a big body, like red zone threat wide receiver. Somebody can go up, get a 50-50 ball, right? And when we say that, we think of like the superstar guys, like Mike Williams, right? Where it's like, that's the guy, right? He used to play with him in college. Oh my goodness. If you get Mike Williams with Deshaun Watson, that would be great. And I would love that. But Mike Williams is probably not available. So you have to think about guys like Alden Tate or somebody in the draft, right? The Senior Bowl is full of 50-50 ball, 6'4" wide receivers that are in their senior year at college because they don't run very fast, right? We don't need the fastest guy in the world. We need somebody who can box out and just get them one, right? And what that will do is that it keeps David Njoku on the scene in the red zone. So now you have to have a DB worried about the fade route to the big guy, the 50-50 ball. And then that's going to pull safety attention away from the seam, and then you can get a true 50-50 ball for David Njoku in the middle of the field. So it's going to open up David, right? That guy that we signed might get 3 or 5 touchdowns. I'm fine with that. 200 yards, 3-5 touchdowns, that's putting in work for whoever that guy is. But that's really going to open up things for David Njoku. It's going to open up things for Amari Cooper. Underneath is going to open up things for Donovan Peoples-Jones. So I think that's the one thing that they need there that will open up things, whether they get that from another tight end, a more athletic tight end, or they get that from a bigger-bodied wide receiver. I think it's something that they can benefit from. Obviously, you want a deep threat guy, too. That would be helpful. But I think some diversity in personnel body types and physical traits would do that wide receiver room a lot of good. And it's already a good one.
All right. Before we go to break, let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave, Frank from Cleveland. Hey, looking ahead to next year with the wide receiver group. Just say they won 5 wide in a couple plays. You got Peoples-Jones, Mari Cooper, Darden, Grant, and Schwartz. Think that would cause some havoc for teams with the speed of those 3 guys? Thanks for taking my call, Dave. Bye.
As always, appreciate it. That's an interesting concept with Schwartz and Darden, and I'm thinking they're going to play more empty. That'll be a function that they go to more with Deshaun Watson because it allows them to see what the defense is doing.
Yeah, they've been great out of empty this year. Jacoby Brissett and Deshaun Watson. They've been one of the most efficient teams in the NFL out of empty. I think they really found something there. Now, it's worth noting when the Browns go to empty, they don't go 5 wide. They go 4 and 1.
Yep.
So it's like 11 personnel, I think, on the field. So they don't often go 5 wide, mainly because they don't really have 5 wide receivers that you'll put out there. But this offense, the way it's built, you're not going to go 5 wide very often, right? But what you do need is a athletic, route-catching tight end in order to make all that work. If you want to go into empty a lot, that's why they gave David Njoku the money that they gave him. And I wouldn't be surprised, Dave. I really wouldn't if Kareem Hunt's out and they bring in a more defined scat back for those kind of situations, right? They wanted Demetric Felton to be this. It has not worked out. Maybe they get somebody in free agency like a Jarrett McKinnon or something like that, a veteran scat back, third down running back. Think like Deion Lewis, right? Like back in the day, he like 10 years ago would be like a perfect guy for this kind of a role. Somebody to take that role in there so you can have 5 wide receivers, but you're not in 5 wide personnel, right? You're still in 11.
Fair enough. And that would be very interesting because all the things you can do with motion and jet sweeps out of that as well. That's the thought behind that.
Orbits and then RPOs, all that.
Yep. Quincy Carrier and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Also hear from Myles Garrett, Sports4CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier from Untitled and Unfiltered Browns coverage. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Just have a quick question. I know it's probably irrelevant or probably extreme, but do you see any way that DeAndre Hopkins is a Cleveland Brown while Deshaun Watson's here? Just want to hear your thoughts. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Quincy, I'd love it. Don't think they're going to be able to find a way to do that relative to what it would take to get him and the amount of money it would take to pay him, too. But I like where he's thinking.
Hey, man, I could see it. I just have to be asleep to see it, right? Like, it feels like a dream. You know what I mean? I'd love to be wrong. DeAndre Hopkins here with Deshaun Watson would be a combination, right? You talk about everything that I want that guy to be. That's DeAndre Hopkins, 50-50 ball extraordinaire DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, the chemistry's already there. Yeah, it would be amazing. I don't know if you can get it done. You know what I mean? But if you can, I wouldn't pass up on it, but it feels like a dream. You know what I mean? That feels like a dream.
I'm with you. Myles Garrett talked about the defense closing out games and the improvement it's made the last 3-4 games.
Takeaways early on, and playing with that edge. I mean, once you have that little confidence booster, you see that you're playing complementary with the offense. They're going down, they're scoring points and putting points on the board, and you're going back and forth. It's a natural rhythm that you become accustomed to, and it's easier to go down there and make stops knowing that they're going to go down and make a big play.
So, Quincy, Browns only gave up 3 points against the Ravens, but they still gave up over 7 yards a carry when the Ravens ran the football, and for some reason they stopped it. So I get the point total, and they played better, and they got the takeaways, but man, they got to stop that run game.
I remember a young man by the name of Quincy was on this show, and I said, hey, it's the best way to help the defense? Going up by 10 points. Because you know what stops happening when you go up by 10 points? The other team stops running the ball. I don't know why. All right, in a game like that, they should have ran the ball. But they got down 10 in every coaching staff in the NFL. The second they go down 10, they got to throw that ball, right? Like, they just got to throw the ball, right? Like, that's what happens in the NFL. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what your personnel is. You go down 10 points, you start throwing the ball way more. It's a mental thing, right? Like, too many smart coaches. The only one I have seen not fall into this trap is Kyle Shanahan. And that's mainly because he don't ever trust his quarterbacks because he's had Jimmy Garoppolo this whole time. But everybody else, no matter who their quarterback is, unless it is a third-string practice squad guy, they will throw the ball like crazy the second they go down 10 points. And that is what's best for the defense, right? When everybody was like, hey, Deshaun can't fix the defense, that's technically true. He does not play DB, but he can get you up 10 points. He can control time of possession. All of these things help the defense. And when you go up 10 points, all of a sudden, running stops. Now, if you go down 10 points, it becomes a slaughter because all they're going to do is run the ball. But 10 points, I mean, it's really it. You just got to avoid getting down 10, and you got to get up 10. And once you get up 10, the Browns defense is actually not bad because they won't run the ball, right? That's the thing.
You figured it out. Points to you. This is so the Browns play the Saints. So take a look at this. Worst fourth quarter point differential since the beginning of November. The Colts are minus 84. The Saints are minus 35. And then you see the Cardinals and the Dolphins and the Bears. But minus 35 in the fourth quarter. So keep the game close and then have at it in the fourth quarter against the New Orleans Saints.
I know this ain't got nothing to do with the New Orleans Saints. So can we talk about that negative 85? Like, they gave up, if you get rid of last week's game where they gave up, 33, an NFL record in the fourth quarter or something like that.
They're still minus 50.
They still are plus 50.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, I know.
What have they been doing? Imagine being a Colts fan this year. Imagine. And then they get Jeff Saturday in there and he blows a 30. Woo! Woo! Look. We always think we dealing with it the worst. We are not. Okay, Colts fans are living through the worst case scenario right now. It's crazy. But as far as the Saints go, yeah, they've had trouble closing these games out. Right, they gave up a lead to the Bengals. They've given up plenty of leads. Their quarterback's Andy Dalton right now.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of what he has done throughout his career. So, it's going to be there for the Browns. It's going to be interesting to see what the Saints' game plan is this week because they're not a particularly strong run team. And, I mean, this is why they're not a good team right now. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with them.
So we mentioned earlier in the show Myles Garrett named to the Pro Bowl. There are some changes to the Pro Bowl. Myles Garrett was asked about the changes to the Pro Bowl.
I need someone to explain that to me because I don't know if we're doing a little dodgeball, if we're doing a little pushed away, doing military training out there. They got a little obstacle course and whatever. when I first started, it was like, okay, you can hit guys, but just not too hard. In that last game, it was like I saw someone get down by two-hand touch. So I'm not sure where we're going with that. Maybe it'll come back in the future, but I'm not sure how it's gonna go or how I'll react to it. I guess I'll see when I get there.
So it's a valid point. Again, it's more about the honor. Last thing in the world you want is somebody getting hurt in a Pro Bowl. So I get it.
If we all get that, right? The last thing you want is somebody getting hurt in the Pro Bowl. Then, Dave, why does everybody complain about the lack of effort in the Pro Bowl? Why does everybody do it? Every year. I have wondered this. Every year, the Pro Bowl game starts and everybody goes, it's a joke. Nobody's trying to hit anybody. They show that Sean Taylor clip of him absolutely mollywhopping some poor guy in the Pro Bowl where nobody's expecting it. They're like, this is what the Pro Bowl should be. You want people to get hurt playing actual football in the Pro Bowl. The Pro Bowl is supposed to be so you can see one of your favorite players one more time. Go, hey, that's Myles Garrett. He has a Browns helmet on. Woo! And then that's it. That's literally it. That's what the Pro Bowl is for. It is not a real football game, but every year we ruined this. We ruined this as fans. We did it to ourselves because every year we can't help but watch the Pro Bowl and act like it should be the NFC Championship game effort that they should be putting in. And now we got dodgeball. We don't even get football no more with the Pro Bowl. We don't even get to pretend like it's a game anymore. We getting dodgeball, y'all. This is congratulations, Twitter. Y'all did this because y'all want to complain about the effort on the Pro Bowl. Well, don't nobody want anybody to work hard at the Pro Bowl? When's the last time you're like, I want Myles to get 4 sacks at the Pro Bowl? Who cares? It's the Pro Bowl. Why are we complaining about the effort? But no, we nonstop complain about the effort at the Pro Bowl, and now we get dodgeball. I hope this is as exciting as watching Pat Mahomes dap up a wide receiver after throwing an 80-yard bomb for fun, because I know what I would rather watch.
Quincy Carrier, as always, man. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Quincy.
No problem.
All right, Quincy Carrier, make sure you check him out. Untitled, unfiltered Browns coverage, always good stuff. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side break, we turn our attention to the Ohio State Buckeyes, getting ready for the national semifinals against Georgia. Stephen Means straight ahead on Sports4CLE.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We turn our attention to the Ohio State Buckeyes getting ready to play in the national semifinals, the college football playoff coming up on New Year's Eve. Let's welcome in Stephen Means, Buckeyes beat reporter for cleveland.com and the Plain Dealer. Stephen, we'll get to the national semifinal game in a minute, but recruiting class, national letter, the early signing of a National Letter of Intent Day yesterday. Ohio State, I think it was the 5th ranked recruiting class nationally. What's the reaction been in Columbus to that?
Obviously, they're happy with it, but the conversation at this point is NIL, name, image, and likeness. And there is some thought out there of as good as this class is, it is the 5th ranked class in the country. But if you look at just average star rating, it actually jumps up to 3rd. You're talking about quality, but it does feel like maybe there were some things left on the board and you wonder what could have been in the world before NIL. But now that is a factor that Ohio State is trying to navigate through and try to adapt to.
And NIL is a challenge because the rules are different in different states. That's kind of the message and the method and what's going on with that. There are no standard rules for NIL.
Yeah, the NCAA sucks. The NCAA very much dropped the ball. I don't even know how to sugarcoat it at this point. It's turned this into the wild, wild west. Let me make this perfectly clear. I have no problem with college athletes making money off their name, image, and like this. I mean, the rest of us can do it. Why can't they? But there is no set standard of rules here. And it's not even really the state laws that are the issue here. The state laws just say you can do it. The problem is that NIL was not meant to be a way to induce kids to come to schools basically by paying recruits to commit to your school. And that's what it has very quickly turned into, which, I mean, we've heard rumors and stories of that for a long time, especially in college football, but now it's legal. Now there's no sanctions if you get caught doing it. And so there's no regulation for it. It is just kind of, up in the air. And for Ohio State, it's not so much that they don't want to partake in some of that. They would rather not pay recruits to come to Ohio State. That's not where they want to start the conversation. But at this point, this is where we are, and they have to figure out a way to navigate it and really just kind of keep up and not fall behind, because this can get very ugly really quickly unless there's any type of regulation that happens over the next couple of years.
Who are some of the big name recruits that Ryan Day pulled in that they're happy to have down in Columbus?
Yeah, I think the biggest names are obviously the wide receivers. Brian Hartline is the best assistant coach in college football at this point, whether it's, developing the talent you're seeing with Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave are doing in the NFL, or even Jackson Smith and Jigba, Marvin Harrison Jr., or bringing it in. The top of that list is Brandon Ennis for this 2023 class. He's the number 4 receiver in the country, the number 29 player, the only 5-star in this recruiting class, which is not normal. Ohio State usually has 2 or 3 5-stars. This is actually the first time they've had just one in a class since 2016 with Nick Bosa. But Brandon Ennis and Noah Rogers, those are the top 2 names on the board. Noah Rogers, number 45 player. Those guys, they can contribute immediately. And then you look at a guy like Luke Montgomery, one of 7 kids from Ohio. He's been one of the vocal leaders of this class as an offensive tackle. This is a guy that even if he probably won't start as a true freshman because it's hard for offensive linemen to do so. But this is a kid who could be a multi-year starter at any spot on the offensive line. But once again, this is Brian Hartline showing just how valuable he is to this program. He's got 3 kids in the top 100 if you add Carnell Tate in there, and then another kid by the name of Bryson Rogers, who has got Ohio roots living down in Florida.
C.J. Stroud, we're pretty sure he's going to enter the NFL draft whenever the college football playoff run ends. Who's the quarterback in waiting? Do we know who will likely be the next quarterback of the Buckeyes?
So there's going to be a battle. It's interesting because we've seen Kyle McCord. That's the first name I'll say, Kyle McCord. He's been here for now 2 years. He's the guy who came in for C.J. Stroud when C.J. sat out the Akron game in 2021. He looked pretty decent as a true freshman, but that's the guy who head into the spring with the lead in this battle. But it will be a battle between him and Devin Brown, who is wrapping up his true freshman season. We haven't seen a lot of either one of those guys. Devin Brown's actually never thrown a pass, which, according to Ryan Day, is the worst thing that can happen to a quarterback. At least that's how he was trying to sell it before CJ won the job. But those two will battle it out as the main guys. Ideally, how McCord wins this job so you don't blow up your entire quarterback room, but we'll see going into the fall. The spring, those two are going to be the only scholarship quarterbacks on the roster, at least as things stand right now, with the 2023 commit Lincoln Keenholz not getting there till June. So those two are going to have plenty of reps in the spring to kind of battle this out.
So after the game, the loss to Michigan, a lot of people thought the season, they weren't going to make the playoff. What's been the reaction to getting into the college football playoff from Ryan Day, from the Buckeyes, and just kind of the whole vibe of, yeah, we're in?
New life. That theme has been a constant, whether you're talking to the coaches or you're talking to the players. They did practice twice before those conference championship games happened. You're playing in some bowl game, you do know that. Well, you don't know if it's going to be a Rose Bowl or a playoff game or maybe even the Orange Bowl is what they would have done just for not playing in the Rose Bowl 2 years in a row. But you didn't know. And then a lot of these guys that were watching the game, especially on Friday night, that Utah-USC game, rooting for Utah, but also just trying to enjoy a good game. And as it's playing out, they're having all the emotions that the rest of us are having watching a good football game. But the moment they saw, if you look on social media, the moment USC lost that game, you saw a lot of them start tweeting back to work. But it was kind of like this new breath of fresh air. Whether they deserve it or not, that's irrelevant. They're one of the 4 best teams in the country. They just so happened to lose to their rival, who was also one of the 4 best teams in the country. And so this is new life. They understand that there is maybe a chance that if they beat Georgia, that Michigan may be waiting for them in the national championship game if Michigan can beat TCU. But they can't lick their wounds on the Michigan loss right now, and they can't even focus on something that's a hypothetical right now because they're trying to get ready to face the reigning champions who have proven all year they've been the best team in college football.
Stephen Means, Buckeyes beat reporter, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side, we'll preview that game. Buckeyes getting ready to face Georgia in the national semifinals in the Peach Bowl down in Atlanta. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back talking Buckeyes and Bulldogs when we return.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue with Stephen Means, the Ohio State beat reporter for cleveland.com, as well as the Plain Dealer. Stephen, we touched on it. It's Georgia, the defending national champs, #1 all season. When you look at the Georgia Bulldogs, what concerns the Buckeyes the most about that team?
So the more time goes on, I'm less concerned in terms of there seems to be this feeling that because of what happened in the Michigan game, Georgia is basically this boogeyman and Ohio State doesn't belong on the same field as them. Now, the concerning things, to answer the question, Brock Bowers is the best tight end in football, and he's probably the closest thing to Travis Kelce from a tight end prospect standpoint. And he's only a sophomore, so that's always scary. I think Stetson Bennett has proven to be more than just some game-managing quarterback, this cool walk-on story. I mean, he was a Heisman finalist for crying out. That this case, he is a quality football player. They've got a gang of different running backs, one of which Ohio State recruited hard, and Kendall Milton, a former 5-star in the 2020 class. And obviously on the defensive end, things are led by Jalen Carter, who might be the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. But he's not the only one. That defensive line is loaded with talent. You got a secondary led by Keely Ringo, who last year Georgia had a historic defense. Well, this year the secondary is better than what they had on that historic defense, just because a lot of those guys are a year older. The only thing that's missing is Nolan Smith, who has been dealing with a shoulder injury, so he won't play in that game. But even with all that being said, even with the way that Georgia's kind of run through the year, it hasn't been dominating to the point that I feel like this won't be a competitive game. I'm not really ready to put a score yet, but I think that people have those 5 plays that went wrong in the Michigan game for Ohio State, and they've let that define what this team is. And I'm not quite sure that's the case, even though it's fair to think Georgia will maybe win this game if that's where you're at. But I don't think it's going to be some, version of 2016 when Ohio State went to play Clemson and it was a 31-0 blowout. I don't think it's going to be anything close to that.
How healthy are the running backs? People tend to forget Ohio State didn't have either of their top 2 running backs. That's a pretty important element to that offense.
Yeah, I think it's been funny. We've done a lot of nitpicking with Ohio State, and I don't think at any point this year we remember that the 3 reasons why we thought this was going to be the best offense in college football were C.J. Stroud, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and TreVeyon Henderson. Well, Jackson Smith-Njigba played 60 snaps, not 60 snaps. That's not even a full game's worth of snaps. And TreVeyon Henderson has been alternating every week basically for the last 8 weeks between being in a boot and trying to limp his way through a football game. And so that's a lot to lose. He won't play in this Peach Bowl. He's already announced that. Jackson Smith-Njigba has already announced that he's opted out as well. Neither one of those 2 guys are healthy. It's not because Jackson Smith-Njigba is trying to save his draft stock or anything like that. He genuinely, that hamstring is not healthy, while TreVeyon Henderson, he's got a lot of stuff going on in that foot. So they won't play, but Mayan Williams is expected to be back. So I would expect him to be the workhorse. But then also Dallin Hayden has proven himself, and Chip Trainum, a guy who has played running back in the past and actually played running back for the bulk of the Michigan game, he'll also be available as well. So no Jackson, no TreVeyon. Obviously, Evan Pryor has been out all year, but everybody else that you would expect to maybe have an impact of this game should be the healthiest they've been in weeks. And that includes on the defensive side of the ball with guys like Tommy Eichenberg, who's been playing with broken hands, and Mike Hall Jr., who started the year out looking like he was going to be an All-American candidate until a shoulder injury, and both shoulders really kind of limited him the second half of the season. But this should be the healthiest we've seen this team all year, with the asterisk of you're missing 2 of your 3 best players.
So when you look at this game and the matchups, what are some of the key matchups that are going to define who wins this game?
I mentioned Keely Ringo before. College football corners don't follow. Really, in the NFL, you don't even follow. You got to be ridiculously good to travel with a receiver. But anytime he's matched up on Marvin Harrison Jr., it's going to be box office television. Just because Marvin Harrison is a freak. I mean, he's 6'4", 205, and everything else under the planet. Well, Keely Ringo is a bit of a freak as a cornerback. He's a bigger corner who is physical. He's a first-round draft pick. At least he's expected to be coming this spring. And Marvin Harrison looks like he's going to be wide receiver 1 in the 2024 NFL draft. And so that'll always be an interesting thing to watch. Outside of that, I think, honestly, the most interesting head-to-head battle here is the 2 head coaches. Ryan Day is the play caller as well. He's an offensive mind. He's known to be an offensive genius. Well, Kirby Smart is known to be a defensive mind and a defensive genius. He's the guy behind a lot of those Alabama defenses that were so great back when he was a defensive coordinator for there, and he's just brought that to Georgia now that he's the head coach. So that, more than anything, I think that's what's going to decide the game. This is the game everybody wanted to see a year ago when Georgia had an historic defense and Ohio State had the best offense. Well, we're getting it a year later, but the way those 2 call plays and really approach things as 2 aggressive play callers, that's more interesting than any individual piece is.
So you think the key to this is how well C.J. Stroud and that offense can get things rolling? Is that kind of fair to say, you think?
Yeah, I had a stat, over 150 games in Ohio State's the history of its program where it's scored at least 40 points. they've never lost a single game when they've scored 40 points. And all of Ryan Day's losses, all 5 of his losses, they've failed to score 30. He put that benchmark of 40 on there when we talked a couple weeks ago, and that's the bare minimum if you're trying to win a national championship. That especially goes for a case with an offense like this. If this offense shows up, if Ryan Day as a play caller shows up, if C.J. Stroud as a passer shows up, if these wide receivers show up and they're finishing off drives with touchdowns, then this is going to be an interesting game. But if we see penalties and stall drives similar to what we saw against Michigan the last 2 years, what we saw against Oregon last season, then they don't have a chance in this game. So this offense has to be at its best regardless of what this defense is or isn't getting up.
Stephen Means, as always, great stuff. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much, Stephen.
Definitely, anytime.
Stephen Means, make sure you check him out. Great Buckeyes coverage, cleveland.com, as well as in the pages of the Plain Dealer. He'll have plenty leading up to that national semifinal game, New Year's Eve, against the Georgia Bulldogs. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.